In this real-side experience, I would find myself in a vast, multi-levelled car park building, and I have experienced being in similar buildings before. The representation is generally that of creation, the multi-levelled car park representing the literal life levels of the simulator, and although I have never counted the levels of this car park during the times I find myself there, I would suggest that the levels would number 5, just as it is in creation. On previous occasions, I have been with groups of individuals, and taking them through the levels of this car park, representing then my showing agreeable individuals parts of creation and of themselves that they had perhaps been unaware of. And as I do transition through the levels upwards, although again this would be more from the personal self-perspective, that of motion and point to point, as everything in fact is, and here and now, and so realistically then there is no motion, but as I ascend and reach the top level, I find it is always exposed to the sky, and this represents then the last level of creation, the etheric, and the vast endless sky above would be the endlessness of the true reality, the real universes of the is, that are to be recognized from the comparisons everything in creation and all the created ideas throughout all the body vehicles and corresponding life levels provide, recognizing the is by comparison to what it isn't. And also the car park would be rather appropriate as representing this simulator at this time, a large building made of stone, as all the agreements to cause and effect restriction and control are very rigid, very compounded and compacted, as the consciousness tends to become, that then effects simulators that are very old, simulators that have been overburdened with the restricting ideas that effect it, and with the overall agreements that have stifled awareness. And we, of course, will find parked cars, which represent here the attitudes, considerations, assumptions, convictions and ideas of the personal self that are resulting in where the individual's cars are to be found, which level of creation people have limited themselves to, through what they are deciding and agreeing with. And so, here I was, in this simulator, representing a car park again, and I seemed to be randomly traversing through the multi-dimensional levels of it. As I proceeded, I would notice that the very walls seemed to be melting, the concrete that made up the building's construction bubbling and dripping down the walls, as though due to extreme heat. There were multitudes of other individuals here also, and they seemed to be rather in a panic, and perhaps understandably so, as the building, the car park they were contained within, seemed to be deteriorating. And then, glancing upwards, the ceiling of the life level I currently was on was bulging and heaving, and beginning to sink down, as though its structural integrity was compromised, that it couldn't support its own weight. This, I would surmise, was another real-side future view of the simulator in jeopardy, buckling under the weight of the overall compounded and restricted consciousness that makes up its construction. For yes, the simulator is spiraling into demise, based on the cause and effect agreements to a restriction that are bringing about this situation. The majority of the unconscious and unaware, including the controllers, don't recognize how, through the way the consciousness has been restricted, how awareness has been stifled, that this is bringing about the demise of the simulation, and the ultimate conclusion if things continue on in this vein, if the vast majority remain with the personal self, a personal self that through its agreements is a contributory factor to simulator degradation, that the simulator will implode, and everyone still in it, all those who haven't recognized the ears, will be caught in this implosion, and as with previous real-side experiences, revealing simulator upheavals, at that point it will become very apparent to everyone throughout creation that this is taking place, as up until now it's rather easy to pretend that everything is fine, even as the world becomes steadily more polluted and poisoned, and as the skies go black. For what we are perceiving through a programmed personal self is not the simulator or the world as it actually is, but more a cyberspace overlap, like walking through a desolate landscape with a virtual reality headset on that shows the land as vibrant. For on the real side, beyond the programmed physical vehicle perceptions, through the real awareness, you can see the simulator as it actually is, and it is enveloped in a murky darkness that represents the steadily increasing overall unconsciousness. But there will come a moment when the demise of the simulator reaches a point where it becomes very apparent, and at that moment the masses will cling on to what they do know, what they are familiar with, as everything around them starts to fall apart and implode. They will create emotion in response to this situation, and generally that of fear. And this was very much so in this real-side experience, as the car park representing the simulator began to buckle and disintegrate, and everyone would be running in panic and racked in fear. Even at this late hour, it was possible that individuals could still extricate themselves, or at least be more favourably positioned than those remaining with their personal selves, and resigning themselves then to the effects of what they had played a part in causing, as we all are responsible for the simulator state as it stands, as we are a part of the consciousness that created it. Of course, only through standing in the real awareness, in the nowness of the true reality of ourselves, aside from the ideas of creation, are we fine, and beyond then the effects of the personal self, although it takes a few moments for the individual to fully and sincerely stand in their real awareness and let go of the personal self and all the ideas it comprises of. So it wouldn't be a case that people during the cataclysmic simulator situations could just spring into their real awareness and be fine, as it is a process to be able to stand fully in the nowness of the ears, as much by way of facing the personal self and releasing all the agreements and attachments that are mostly subconscious must be done, that we are not anchored to creation through the effects of the taplines we still cling to. It's not impossible that someone could adamantly decide to recognize the ears and do so in a single moment, for in every new moment of the ears, everything is there, and so you could complete your process in one single moment of adamant, real intended decision, absent of the time it would take for the personal self to be shown all the experiences, etc. For it is the personal self that required verification, experiences, that needs the time for consideration to go back and forth, but maybe for some they could do it all in one moment, and the personal self of a particular that it doesn't need the cause and effect verifications, and created experiential real side experiences for it to fully align itself with the real purpose of is recognition. But for most, it may be at too late a stage to get on board with the process of awareness now. There is a small window, as Duane always says. And besides, part of the process also is earning our way, earning our awareness through the promoting and sharing of the ears. So not impossible that someone could, in a moment, complete their awareness and is recognition, but not very realistic. And as these individuals in the experience clearly revealed, most will choose to sit in their created illusions of fear, and as such, even if they recognized their real awareness, by activating the emotions of the personal self and clinging to them, they place their awareness in the personal self and are then resigned to the effects of it. the effects of the simulator and of the fear emotion they are embracing. Fear is the controller's currency. The marketing of fear is utilized to keep people in creation as readily as any idea the controllers create that claims everyone's agreement, attention, focus through their marketing ploy methods. And through fear, individuals tend then to turn to their governments and controllers that they will remove that which is causing them fear, even though the situations that everyone is reacting with fear in response to is that which the controllers have created and got everyone to agree with. It's always agreement that then makes it a collective reality. And the fear that the controllers endeavour to keep people locked into was also revealed in this real side experience, as Dark Force characters dressed in hazmat suits and protective clothing would enter the masses of the panic-racked unaware and armed with what seemed to be personal cannons. They would proceed to engulf everyone in fire through the weapons they carried. As this is a constant throughout creation of agreements maintained to the controllers through the fear of reprisals, of torture or death for anyone who opposes the control systems. A fear that becomes ingrained in the subconscious and carries over lifetime to lifetime, ensuring a continued agreement to the controllers through the fear of not doing so that will stem from past experience, even if the individual doesn't understand or recognize the source of this fear. A representation of quite literally getting burnt if you present as any kind of opposition to the authorities, as the individuals here were chased down and set alight, and even the individuals who have agreed and obeyed and been perfect little slaves, they would be getting set ablaze just as readily as those who had exhibited more rebellious inclinations, as creation is never a safe place, regardless of what you think or how much you obey the authorities, and racked in fear as they were, as the simulator crumbled, and the fear exacerbated through the controller's actions. They could run around creation, but really there was nowhere to go if they hadn't recognized the ears at this stage, and the simulator implosion will include every level of it, from the physical through to the etheric.
Thank you, Kevin. As an example of what you shared there, in the community here that we live, there's a Facebook group, Lemission, Friends of Lemission, and when I first came here to live, I posted a number of so-called conspiracy kind of posts, and I really got banged, because the people here are really protective of their restrictions. They're really like don't want anything to do with it as a consciousness. I was confirmed this by somebody else that said when he moved in too, they also got banged. Don't even try to wake these people up, you know. So I started my own Facebook group here, more aware friends of the mission. Duane suggested that, so I started my own group. And then in this regular group here, I just tested it the other day. I just did something humorous, you know. I just posted something humorous, and right away, a couple people got right in there and, you know, why don't you go back to your own group? We don't want to hear it. Basically, they just don't want to wake up. They want to do their, you know, there's a concert here, and the food is good at this restaurant. Just, you know, they want to maintain their La La Land type life here. So it is what it is. They just want to protect what they have, what they think they have, and they're fearful of anything coming in outside of that.
Yes, thank you, young man. That was terrific. Very, very real. We've been warning people about this a long time. And of course, most people take it for granted. They just kind of hang around and this and that, whatever. And so let me just give you a little idea here. Those that think that all of a sudden, just because they know the real guides, it's all instant. So it's kind of like if you were in the 3rd grade and you told your teacher that, oh, teacher, my dad took me to the university that he went to and graduated with his PhD and his doctrine. Well, just because you know Dad with his PhD and you went to the university, does that mean you have the doctrine too? So again, there's the hint. It's a whole lot to recognize the end isness and 100% sincerity and all those little cute attachments that a person has. Well, good luck. So again, the warning's there. This is how real it gets. And so again, you have your personal consciousness to deal with, just like the corporation and all those people that were there. I was there a long time too, and now they're all pizza dough. They're going nowhere. They're all stuck in creation. So this is how real it gets. Thank you so much, Kevin. Terrific.
I was just going to say about the higher initiate or whatever, and these people that I know, and I will say, you know, when you try to say to them, why don't you understand or recognize what the person is going through or sharing and acknowledge it instead of as something sort of out of the box of wherever the teaching or the master or the group or their own consciousness is. Of course, everything that you're going to learn or hear about is going to be somewhere varied from the norm and the center of things. Of course, it has to. That's the natural thing. When things are all like status quo and as they go, you know, it doesn't have any relevance. It doesn't fire up any imagination. It doesn't see into any other doorway or through the glass and through the glass darkly, as they say. And okay, you know, and whenever the comment I'll make about trying to communicate to them is that they'll turn off very quickly and say, I won't talk about that, or, you know, don't attack the master, or you're belittling this and you're dogging on that. Whichever, you know, reaction they have, it's always or usually either an emotional or a mental reaction, defensive, and or somewhat accusatory, even though they try and be as sweet and polite and nice, and or they will do the other thing, which is to turn off and cut off communication and all of that, which is all of these cause and effect reactions to things that means that you're not going to be able to move ahead and progress, because that's what it takes, is that kind of openness, no matter what. So that's my comment, I guess. And hope that makes sense with what you all are talking about.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. We know what they're going to do. Basically, they're going to defend. Call us a cult. You know, basically, there's only so many things they do. So you just, like Duane says, get prepared to do something funny or something, you know, something kind of off the wall or something to kind of move them out of their position to help them see something more, because it's basically the same thing. We've heard it so many times, that their reaction, because they don't know how to react otherwise. So we're here to help them to see that there's other options, you know, so that's the challenge.
You know, I usually get some points where I know where a certain track of conversation is going to go. So yes, you have to kind of angle it in from somewhere else, and maybe they'll get to a little bit further down the road until they come up with one of their, or this isn't just the Ekis group, but anybody in a group who has hooks into the ground where they're holding on to, and you know, they're stabilizing themselves with those hooks, and they're naturally, I suppose, unwilling to latch off the anchor. You know, they certainly don't want to get out into the open sea. You know, maybe they'll go a mile offshore, but nah, it's you know, yeah, life here in the prison planet, so to speak, to be true. Any case, thanks, Val.
Yeah,
Yep.
we're in a good position. We're not trying to push anything on anybody. We don't have an agenda. We're just sharing. So we're sincere in what we're doing. So it's all good. And being creative with this, how we're presenting it.